Okay, good afternoon. Good afternoon, all of you, and good afternoon, you guys at Zoomland. Actually, today, about 50 years ago, less 15 minutes, considering also the time differences, was the first time we officially heard on the news about the start of the war, of Yom Kippur War in Israel. So I'm going to share with you some of my own personal experience that I lived there and I was there and I was part of this whole thing. And not too heroic, don't expect too much of that. However, it's something that also made me what I am. So just as short background, I need to take you a year earlier, okay, that I just graduated my high school, which was a naval academy. I was 17 years old, and for whatever reason, my father decided that I'm not going to go directly to the army, to the Navy, because I was supposed to go to the Navy. He made it so that I would go first to study engineering and would join the Navy after finishing my school and serve as an engineer. Yes, he had his ways. It doesn't matter what I wanted. He had his ways. So in the fall of 1972 into 73, I started my basic training at a combat level, like infantry level combat training, like something like 3 months. And right after that, I started my studies in the Technion, the university. The Technion is the kind of parallel to the MIT, for just to make a reference here. And even today, it's not too far away from MIT in terms of quality of studies. So come the summer, and there is about the fall to go, and life is, I'm a student, and in the summer we did reserve service. I did reserve service as a private in the infantry corps, still not assigned. So Yom Kippur was on Shabbat, on Friday, on Saturday. So of course, evening of Yom Kippur, we go to the synagogue, and I need to describe to you the atmosphere in Israel during Yom Kippur. You can imagine that you can go and put your sleeping bag on I-5 and go to sleep on the I-5. Something like that. Serious. It is, the country is dead. Dead. We didn't have a day saving time at that time. Even if we had, because of religious excuses, they would switch back from day saving time before Yom Kippur, because they said it's easier to fast. I don't know how, but it's easier to fast the 25 hours if it starts earlier. Well, whatever. It's okay. So what you see in the evening of Yom Kippur is just before, at 5 o'clock, 4:30, 4:45, towards 5 o'clock in the afternoon, people start coming out of houses, of their apartments or houses, and start walking in the streets. Nothing is going in the streets, no radio, no nothing. And these small streams join together to rivers, and these rivers to giant rivers. As you get closer to a synagogue, more and more, and it is all at the same time, and everybody in white, and it is like awesome view and atmosphere. And of course, there is no, even today, I don't think there is renewal in maybe one or two in Israel. At that time, it was Orthodox or Orthodox. And actually, a lot of people were coming to shuls and everything. They had to create shuls in schools and all kind of places, not just regular shuls. It was like all over the place. And no radio, no television, hardly had television every day, but still, I mean, TV started in Israel in 1967. So there wasn't really, like here, you have all the channels and everything. And so is Yom Kippur. We go in the morning to the service, and I'm going with my father together. We go together. My brother was already just married, and he wasn't at home for that Yom Kippur. And the shul that we are going to, our regular shul, we lived in the downtown of Haifa, okay, which is next to the port, and not too far from our place was the central bus station and the train station. We go in and starting davening and everything. Around 10 o'clock, something like that, in the morning, we started hearing rumbling of diesel engines. And it's not just you hear, the ground was kind of vibrating. And this is something, it doesn't happen in Yom Kippur. I mean, the only car that would travel, maybe it was an ambulance and it would have a siren just if somebody is really sleeping on the road, so he'll wake up and go. So it was extremely strange. And again, reminding you that the central bus station of Haifa was just about maybe 300 yards away. And this noise just goes and goes and trying to continue in, and we are already into the Torah service, and people start to disappear from the synagogue. One by one. Somebody comes in, and 2-3 people are going out. Another one comes in with a talis and maybe with a khaki shirt on under the talis, and another 3-4 goes on. So, and all of them that go are young men. Okay? So, I mean, if a regular service, we would get to Seder Avodah around 2 o'clock at noon, and end up the Musaf around 3 o'clock, and then start Mincha at 4 o'clock, okay? At 1 o'clock, we were back home. The service was just cut, like short, not cut short, but through it. We got back home, and my father, the rabbi, an Orthodox rabbi, not like me, turned on the radio. We had a huge, like a furniture, which was a valves radio, and he turns on and searches on the dial and gets the BBC, because Israeli radio didn't work at all. No radios. No radios, no buses, no cars, no nothing.
Because of Yom Kippur.
Yom Kippur, yeah. Yom Kippur, 2 o'clock, shut down. That's it. So he turns on the radio and we finds the BBC, and the BBC starts talking about there might be hostilities, there is movement of military forces in Egypt and so on. So now we could connect the dots, these two dots. And I'm starting to become anxious, and we had the phone at home. Not too many had at the time. You could wait for a phone for 5-6 years to get the phone. We had the phone because of priorities or whatever. and I'm trying to find out what's going on, and I'm calling one friend or another friend and no answer. And 2:00, the siren goes on. The wheeling siren of air raid goes on, 2:00. So, and it wasn't that airplanes were coming, but that actually was a sign that for everybody to know a war is going on. At 3:00, the radio, and we kept the radio on, and we tried to go on back to the Israeli news at 3:00. The news flash came in and said that most Egypt and Syria started in a combined attack on Israel, and so far Israel holding back and things are under control. Well, and I'm waiting to be called. I know that I already know my friends are being recruited and I'm not recruited, and I was really, really not happy. I'm in a sanctuary that I'm not using harsher words. All my cohorts from school that I couldn't continue with to the Navy are now at sea and are actually fighting. All my cohorts from the Technion that are studying together with me, that are postponing their service, are already recruited, and I am out here doing nothing. Sunday morning, first thing in the Sunday morning, I said, no, I cannot stay like this. I hitchhiked a little bit out of Haifa. There are no buses because buses are recruited, the drivers are recruited. It's almost a ghost town, if you will. So, but hitchhiking, no problem. Everybody that sees a car and sees somebody even standing on the road would stop. Where do you need to go? So, just the outskirts of Haifa, there was a huge ordnance corps depot that they fix cars, tanks, vehicles, whatever, and whatever. So I said, I am going there, and I tell him, look, I'm a mechanic. I have my certificates, and I brought my certificate that I graduated this, that, and the other, and tell me what I can do. So I went there and knocked on the base, the guard, what are you doing? I said, look, I want to start working here to do volunteer. I know that you will need some hands. So I got in, and in no time I found myself in this final stands that we final assembly or putting the final touches on engines, on car and truck engines, and burning it, like you start them and run them and load and adjust and all these kind of things. So for something like 2 weeks, I was working there between 12 to 14 hours a day. And I had one stand here, another stand on the other side, and while I was fixing one engine here, the other one was running, and when that one was off time and this was running, and I'm fixing this and adjusting that, and meanwhile loading another engine on this stand, working, trying to resurrect, if you will, engines. Sometimes you could see the damage of the fighting on what you were doing. And meanwhile, I started at 7 o'clock, came back at 7, 8 o'clock in the evening. The news on the TV were going on, and they were talking about the second day or the third day, on Tuesday, that Israel went on a counterattack. So when you're in counterattack, okay, so it's not so bad. And they also, we already sunk a few ships, They were trying to create a, I wouldn't say optimistic, very optimistic, but a little bit out of realism image. And interestingly, no one was mentioning casualties. There was no talk about casualties. And at the very same time, because of where we were living, which is not too far from the major hospital in the north, Rambam, we constantly hear helicopters. Helicopters coming in, coming in, coming in. So the feeling it is not so good. But again, I'm so busy in working in these 12 hours that it kind of goes back to the, you subconsciously push it away, you know. Then something like a week and a half later, on the 12th of October, or something like that, so a week and a half after the war started, Moshe Dayan, who was the Minister of Defense at the time, comes on the news, and they are talking about, so far we have about 650 fatalities, fallen. And now I have to stop for a second, because why wasn't I recruited? I wasn't recruited because I am a son of what we call in Hebrew Mishpacha Shakula. I don't know how to translate it. It is a bereaved family. My father already lost 2 sons in wars. Oh. So that's the reason why I wasn't recruited. And once we hear this, my father doesn't take it too well. And he had already a heart condition, so he really feels that his heart is not holding it. And so we had to take him to a hospital. I still didn't have my driver's license. I had the car, but didn't have a driver's license. But that doesn't really mean much, and it doesn't have to stop you, of course. And we only could take him because all the regular hospitals were blocked out. They were not taking any civilian patients. So we had to take him to the one of the older hospitals that was a geriatric hospital, but it was taking care of people. And then it dawned on me, the 6-day war wasn't too far out. I remember I was there, you know, and it was like really existential threat that we felt before that. And here it is, we are 8 days into it, and we already have more casualties than we had during the 6-day war, and we are nowhere else. So wasn't such a great situation. And the way that Dayan was presenting it, it is a dire situation. We will prevail, but it is very dire situation. And that is, by the way, looking, we didn't know it that at the time. I'm trying to keep my presentation to what was at the time and what I knew at the time. But at that time, when looking backwards in history, Israel already started to take advantage in the Golan Heights. Israel was already into the Syrian areas, and in the Sinai, it was already in much better situation. The first counterattack that was announced was a huge failure after 3 days, and then they had to wait a lot. So at the end of this, about 12 days, just after the end of Sukkot, the situation in this depot was calming down, and they said, okay, thank you for your services, and we really don't need any more of these services. And then I said, okay, what do I do now? I went back because right after Sukkot starts school. And guess what? Who are the teachers? All the teachers, the male teachers are actually in the frontier. So I went back to the school that I just graduated about a year ago. Okay, and now I think of it, I'm just an 18 years old kid. Okay, and I come there and they know me because I just graduated there a year ago. I go to the principal, to the school principal, not just the whole establishment, and I said, I'm here, what can I do? Thank you, bless God, thank you for coming, because the school is a boarding school, so the kids are living there. So they had in the morning studies, in the afternoon they had the mentors that would, there was no teachers, no mentors, nothing. So I actually moved in there 24/7 to attend in the morning to teach some whatever I know. Now I'm already a student in Technion, so I must be a great one to know this, that, and the other. And so I did that. And the afternoon I was watching out after these kids, and they are also, if you think about it, 13, 14 years old kids that their parents are now all over the place, over the country. Yes, they know, they have contact with their parents, It was I don't know what were the qualifications that allowed me to do this. I really don't know. I was just 18 years old kid, but I did it. 2 days later, Erev Shabbat, okay, the Simchat Torah was on Thursday, and I started there on Friday. I started on Thursday, and Erev Shabbat. In Shabbat, calls come home. I came back home, and we went together with my father, my sister. We went to see, to be at the place of my aunt and uncle. Their son, Menashe, fell in a battle in the west side of the Suez Canal. Menashe, named after my brother that fell in the Independence War. So we are now experienced how to handle this kind of a situation. And that's why they asked my father and my sister to be there. And we got there before the officer from the army representative. They always come like an officer and a doctor, an MD, or and another psychologist or something like that, to announce this kind of thing. It's not like they send a telegram or something like that. And this Menashe, he was a real tzaddik. He was righteous, he was very religious, ultra-Orthodox, but he was so sweet. I mean, he wouldn't impose what his beliefs on others. And I was told later, I read it in a book, and even now, before Yom Kippur, his wife, my cousin, sent me an article of someone, his friend, that wrote about him, that tells that here it is, Simchat Torah. They are after a very fierce battle in the Chinese farm, and he's pulling everyone to dance because it's Simchat Torah. And the next day, he ends his life. And Menashe, the letters of Menashe, actually, if you rearrange them, it is Neshama. And this neshama is no longer with us. And his wife, with utter clinging to devotion and to faith, if you will, in a way beyond something I can understand. And yet I understand in the hindsight how it helped her. She was saying, Adonai Natan v'Adonai Lakach, Yishem Adonai Mevorach. God gave us, God took away, may the name of God be blessed. And then she sat down. And she was then pregnant with the second baby, the daughter. She already had a son 1 year old and was pregnant with a baby that was born about a month later. And just to end with a kind of maybe a little bit more positive note, move forward 12 years. Now we have a bar mitzvah, a combined bar mitzvah and bat mitzvah of the boy and the girl. And we are going up to Jerusalem, to where they live, to celebrate. My aunt already passed away. She had cancer. Whether it has because of losing her son or not, I don't know. No one can tell. And we are there to celebrate it. A very sweet and sorrow, very sad and sweet celebration. And just as it starts, my uncle just falls down. He had a heart attack. And his heart stopped beating. And that very, for some miraculous way, the medics were in 2 minutes there. And they took him out with a heartbeat. And we all went over to the hospital where he was and saying Tehillim and prayers. And he came out. And he lived an additional 5-6 years after that. And passed in good year. So, there is no moral to this story. It's actually the only thing is that so many times events that happen outside and are happening to you create what you are and change you and bring you to strengths and capabilities that you never could have believed that you would have, and they change your life. So, and the only thing we can do basically is to react to whatever happens to us. And Yom Kippur, that's one of the lessons of Yom Kippur. We only can decide what we are doing with what happens to us and how we react and act according to that. גמר חתימה טובה.